Hi, and welcome to the Bleeding Edge podcast. It's the 9th of January 2026, and it's the first show of the year. I'm your host, Ralph Benker, and with me today, I have my co-host, Emile Ogier. Emile, welcome to the show.
Hey, Rolf. Great to be back. It's in 26. Let's get going.
Well, it's going to be a bumpy year for sure. It's still very chilly here in Spain, and I know it's been cold in the UK as well, but the AI news has been hot. I'm going to kick off with a couple of interesting stories, just a bit of a news roundup. So let me just get my list over here. I think one of the things that we have tried in the show in the past is to get AI to write some jokes. The one-liners it's given us for this week are absolutely laughable in themselves. So here we go. The future is here. It's just back-ordered until well into 2026. I don't know why that's funny, but it's just not. If your browser extension asks permission to read and change everything, it means everything. Well, I mean, I think that's a helpful reminder, but also not funny. And then maybe this one is a little bit humorous. CES, so this is the tech show that's happening over in the US. It says, where your fridge gets an AI upgrade before your salary does. That's just sad because it's probably true.
I commend your effort for the second round of allowing AI to have another stand-up night.
Well, I'm determined to figure it out. There must be a good prompt to come up with decent
I
jokes.
think it has improved. There is a mediocre of improvement. Keep going.
Well, let's see. Right. So top 5 stories. Big one, actually, in the last week, OpenAI have launched ChatGPT Health. I did try and get on it, but it says it's not available to me just yet. But it does look pretty interesting. So this one is going to really help people to track their own health. And obviously, it's going to be giving them medical advice. So watch out, doctors. Everybody's going to be a PhD now. But, you know, health is a regulatory and trust minefield. So if this works, I think it could be quite interesting, especially in terms of enterprise adoption. But we'll have to watch this space. Certainly, the marketing video looks very promising. Nvidia, they've unveiled a whole series of very strange names. They've basically got a new platform called Vera Rubin, which is an AI computing platform. And essentially what they're doing is they are integrating multiple technologies so that instead of buying just their graphic processing units, their GPUs, you can actually buy the CPU plus the GPU and the networking stack. And this is really kind of pushing a whole system solution for AI data centers as a product. So they're not just selling the chips, they're actually selling a full stack solution. They've also got a bunch of other things that we will talk about that they've launched also with similar names. This one, as I said, Vera Rubin, really interesting naming convention for their projects, just released at CES. Meta, big news. I really enjoyed hearing about this. They have acquired Manus, reportedly for around $2 billion, which actually is a bit of a steal, if I'm honest, in the AI space, because actually Manus is one of the few AI companies that is turning a profit. So that is a real coup. I've not used Manus hugely, but it's a very popular product. It's got some millions of subscribers, and I think Meta have absolutely stolen a march on their competitors because this is a well-loved, highly functional product that actually has use cases that deliver values. We'll look forward to seeing how they integrate that into the rest of their technology stack. It's reported that they're going to basically integrate it into Facebook and WhatsApp and Instagram. Anthropic have reportedly been seeking a $10 billion raise. So they have a $350 billion valuation currently, and multiple outlets are now reporting that there is talks of a mega round. And I think this is kind of interesting because frontier capital is still pouring into these AI companies. So it hasn't let up. There's all this talk of an AI bubble throughout 2025, and we're still seeing massive funding rounds. I think we just saw XAI raise 20 billion. So they were reportedly looking for 15 billion. They actually raised 20 billion. So this space is definitely very active. And then the last of the top news stories is Boston Dynamics and Google DeepMind, have partnered to bring Gemini robotics to Atlas. And I don't know if you've seen the recent video of Atlas. It kind of has a little bit of a kind of a head that looks like a tin, but it can swivel. So it's really weird. The torso can swivel. It's really mobile. I don't know why you would want to do all of those things, but it must be very expensive with all that movement from an energy perspective. But the point here is that you're actually going to see Gemini inside those robots. So humanoids are coming to a kitchen near you everywhere, I'm pretty sure. AI didn't make that lineup, I did. But it's an interesting space just in terms of what's going on with these partnerships, especially, which again really points to the fact that the winners are going to be the ones that put the best ecosystem together. And that's definitely playing out in this week's news. So that's the roundup. Anything there catch your interest, Emile?
Just two aspects. I completely agree on the Manus purchase. Very much like Meta's purchase of WhatsApp. The gold really is in the active user base. So really interesting to see where they go with that. There's a committed audience behind the product that's doing good things, and yeah, just really interested in it. And regarding the humanoid, to your query, what I'm finding particularly interested in is there seems to be a paradigm shift now, which it feels quite clear to me at least that we are thinking less about emulating ourselves, thinking about that the optimized route for AI is to copy us rather than to allow it to find its own routes to do things better than us. And having more degrees of movement on our body is one of those things. So those cool swivel aspects you were seeing being showcased is examples of us, like humanoids, not needing to turn around, swivel their hips the way we do, being able to operate in more confined spaces and be effectively more efficient.
Yes, and I really enjoyed seeing the gait on Atlas. So the way it walked was a little bit kind of cool, the way it kind of strutted onto the stage. And let's see, I mean, the news around the robotics is probably going to be the hottest news for 2026, is one of my predictions. And the reason why is we are now seeing that China, for example, have deployed 40 humanoid robots to patrol a border, one of the borders of China. I can't quite recall which one, but they've put these 40 robots out there to basically test them in the wild. And this is really where we're going to see a huge amount of learning and feedback. And so you also have in China quite an interesting evolution where they've got robot games. So you've got basically teams of robots that are playing football. Obviously, you've seen some of the robots that have been involved in hand-to-hand combat. So they've been boxing and doing Tai Chi. Not all of it very effective, mind you. But of course, it's improving. And what we're also seeing is Nvidia have actually released another stack, which I'm just going to try and see if I can pull up here because this was really fascinating. They have essentially built what they're calling the Android for robots. So it's basically putting an end to what they call the costly fragmentation of the industry, because you will use a standardized nervous system. And so they're talking about, actually, if you were in the robotic space, you were really tinkering with hardware. But with this end-to-end stack that NVIDIA are putting together, they're going to shift these people more towards software engineering. And actually, you will move from hardware tinkerer to AI architect. And that, I think, is going to unlock just a huge amount of progress in the field. I think the other big shift is the training. So because this new tech is so advanced just in terms of incorporating the base functionality, you're going to be able to train much faster, and you're actually training through natural language and also just mimicking human movement. So you're not training these things in the way that they used to with large data sets. And that means, you're going to be able to train your own model and make it emulate your own movements. So it's more than just chips. It's a full stack platform for robotics. And the key is that they're actually giving them this standardized nervous system. So I actually think that this is going to be incredible. I do want to find the name of this thing. This is called Project Groot and also Jetson Thor. So there you go. You've got Vera Rubin, you've got Groot, and you've got Jetson Thor. somebody is being very creative around picking these program or project names for Nvidia. So some interesting developments there on the robotics side. What's your first news story, Emile?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that point. What's impressed me recently were two showcases of humanoids. I do share your prediction for 26. I think it's going to be a big theme. Is the one I saw a humanoid covering origami, which was incredible because the tactile sensors need to be sensitive enough to delineate between like a millimeter of movement. So it was doing that and folding the paper effectively well. That was really impressive. And the other thing has escaped me. So I will move on to the first news story. It is mid December. So in AI timelines, we could argue the news seems somewhat ancient, but still very interesting. It was only 2 weeks away. This one came in just before Christmas, and ChatGPT's highly anticipated Image Gen 1.5 was released, and it had users either hooked, hating, or hustling. For those who are not aware, this is OpenAI's flagship image model, and somewhat surprisingly, it seemed to be standing up quite well against Nano Banana Pro, which has been holding the court and the crown. Key upgrades include, and these have been verified from OpenAI announcements and user reviews, claiming 4 times faster image generation, better instruction adherence, superior consistency in edits, can now change one element while preserving everything else, with much higher reliability, such as preserving faces, clothing, body posture, lighting, composition, etc. And to boot, much better text adherence. This feature I'm most excited about. Other improvements include a dedicated creative studio, which is essentially a sidebar including presets for things like movie posters, fashion ads, retro styles, and other ready-made looks you can simply click instead of writing those long prompts. Ex-users seem to be vibing hard over this release. So what are the users loving? Precise edits, perfect for selfies, PFPs, and reimagining, makes faster speed, allowing for rapid iteration, preset styles for one-click magic, and that text is much sharper inside of images. And it's significantly better at rendering dense or small text, which is crucial for posters, infographics, and UI mockups that used to generate into a confusing mess, quite honestly. It also apparently handles a lot of faces. Crowds and group shots now look more natural with fewer melted or distorted faces. Showcases include stunning pencil sketches, anatomical exploded views, Y2K glamour selfies, and campfire portraits. So, what are the users debating or hating? Some call it over edited with yellow tint or yellow grain, and please excuse my language. Some are even referring to it as the piss filter. To round up, think of Image Gen 1.5 as moving from slot machine art to something closer to a real design tool you can have a conversation with. Instead of crossing your fingers and hoping that your prompts will work out, this update is about control, speed, and proper editing. As OpenAI catches up on edits and speed, will control precisions beat wild realism or force everyone to switch tools mid-project?
Yeah, interesting. And I'm just having a look at it actually because I haven't played around with it because I've been too invested in Nano Banana Pro. It doesn't allow you to actually upload an image. So I can't start with something. This is very much a image generator where you describe what you want. And I can see, right off the cuff, it's actually saying you try a style on an image, but it's not allowing me to, wait, here it is. It just wasn't loading. So there it says add photos. So let me give it a go. I'm going to add a photo of myself. Let's go in and I will just share screen. Let's see what we come up with here. So hopefully we'll satisfy one of our biggest fans, Craig Smith, who has suggested that we do a little bit more on the visual side, which, is fair enough, but it doesn't half introduce its own problems. So there we are. So what we want to do is generate an image for the Bleeding Edge podcast, YouTube thumbnail 21. Right. And maybe what I need to do is actually add our logo.
Small amendments on the episode.
I have lost. So it's definitely not fast, but what is quite nice is that it's actually allowing you to start your next project which I think is awesome.
Is this on the free tier, Wolf?
This is on a paid tier.
Interesting.
I'm on the Plus plan. So let's
Hmm,
see. So,
that's not bad.
wow, it's really styled me out. Actually, I think the features are, but I'm not quite sure. We're in the year 226. That's quite a long time away from now. This is what the future looks like, people.
I like
So
the
there
call
you
to
go.
action though.
I actually love what it's done there. That's the first time I've played around with this new model. So thanks for calling that out. Yeah, we might use that one. Let's see. So given I am sharing my screen, I'm going to actually carry on with screen sharing. Although now I do need to,
I'm relieved to see you've got the correct amount of fingers.
I haven't always. Well, I actually have a little story to share there. So I had a moment with Gemini just yesterday. And basically it keeps telling me I can't edit a photo of you because you are an internet personality. And I'm like, I said, but this is a photo of me. So I was trying to test out a new prompt, and it just wouldn't generate the prompt for me because it said you are an internet personality. So I said to it, look, you need to generate this photo. So it goes ahead, it generates the photo, and it basically turns me into the actor Michael B. Jordan. So Michael B. Jordan is an American actor. He's an African American actor. I am just an African podcaster, and we don't look very similar at all. But it then said, I can't edit your photo because you look like this guy. And I'm like, well, I'm not this guy. So I ended up actually loading a different photo, which it then did process. But it just goes to show, these models definitely do get confused. But I think the thing that it calls out for me is that verifiable information about you that you essentially load into the machine, that you say, I give you full rights, and it's verified that, you have the rights to edit the likeness of that particular person. This is something that's no doubt going to come in the future, because especially if you are Michael B. Jordan and you want to edit your own photo, it's going to say, sorry, but you can't do it. So I feel very sorry for that guy, because no matter how many photos he loads up, the AI is going to be protecting him from himself. And clearly, that's not very effective. So I can see a world that we are going to move towards where we will actually be, really just trying to verify our own information. So here we go. I will show you what I ended up with. So this, I loaded a photo of myself. It came up with this guy, Michael B. Jordan, and said, there you go, Ralph, that's what you look like. And I said, no, that's not me. And it said, sorry, I can't edit your photo because you are an internet personality. I then had to try again. You can see the same photo. I gave it another one, and eventually it ended up with me looking like that. I don't dress like that, but I don't have a tiger like that either. At least I think that's a tiger. But anyway, there we go. So it's useful to have multiple models. And I think just goes to show, you can't just rely on one LLM these days. Unfortunately, when you get stuck and you hit a bottleneck, you need to be able to jump into something else. So let's move on. I got a couple of other stories here, and hopefully I'm sharing what is our new look weekly AI news pack. So hopefully after the show, I will be publishing this, and people will be able to interact with the weekly news and just see how we actually go about building it. But a couple of things to note. So we've got this market cap valuation from OpenAI. They're doing something really interesting. They've set aside 50 billion for an employee stock grant pool. So I think this is a really big move in terms of just retention. So I think if you're working at OpenAI today and you are, able to participate in that stock grant pool, if they continue with their current success, it may well be worth something. Now, that's not guaranteed. I think this is what's quite interesting about the space, whether OpenAI will actually survive and be able to onboard enterprise customers that will ensure their continued profitable. I say continued, they've never been profitable, but will actually lead them to profitability. And then that 50 billion may well be worth a lot more. So stick around if you're an OpenAI employee. Just another unusual news story. We don't hear that much from Mistral AI. So last year they made some news because they raised quite a big funding pool with the Dutch chip machine manufacturer ASML. So obviously they're making the hardware that actually drive the GPUs and CPUs. And they're the only supplier of that equipment. They invested massively in Mistral AI. and Mistral is actually providing them with their own internal AI as they improve innovation and their own operation. But now we've got the French armed forces that have signed up a framework agreement. I think this idea of sovereign hosting is really important. So Mistral is obviously Europe's attempt at LLM solution, and they've actually made some steady progress. They're not as kind of newsworthy, should we say, or don't contribute as much to the news, but they have had some solid progress last year. They've got a very good coding tool that they launched just at the back end. And now we see in January this deal with the French Defense Ministry. So that's good for them. One other news item that I thought was really fascinating in the last week was this kind of critical N8N workflow flaw. Now, I don't even know why this is news this week, to be honest, because this came out in November. It was actually patched by N8N in November. N8N provide a software that is a fantastic tool for workflow automation. And they did have a bit of a vulnerability that allowed people to actually get control over your server. But as I say, they patched that back in November. And for some reason, this has now made news in January. So I don't know why the news is so slow on that. I think one of the things to note is a lot of people don't update their tools, and so there is a bit of vulnerability. The vulnerability still exists until people actually upgrade to the latest version. So the news is good from that point of view, and maybe that's why it's made a bit of an appearance. Another interesting item that I came across in the news in the last week is that Nvidia, which is now actually able to sell to Chinese customers, they're asking Chinese customers to pay up front for their H200 shipments. I think that's just a clever ploy by the salespeople to improve cash flow, to be honest. But the news is kind of calling out this concept of procurement friction and the relationship with the geopolitical news and just geopolitics in general, actually driving a lot of what is going on in the LLM space and the AI space. Prepayments can signal supply stress, which maybe, possibly, or maybe it's just a clever ploy by the salespeople to get cash out of their customers faster. So a couple of interesting points there. And maybe if I just finish up with, there's so many over here. I don't know if I can go through all of these right now, but there is some news on Waymo, which is obviously a taxi company with robotic taxis. They are rebranding from Zika to Ojai. I don't know, Ojai. I don't know how you say that. But I don't know why they didn't just call themselves Waymo. But anyway, they're onto their sixth generation sensor suite. So this is obviously going to allow them to get into more cities. So that's quite fascinating. I know that our one big fan, Craig Smith, has been riding around in one of the first robo taxis in London. Posted a picture on that the other day. So that's kind of interesting. Have you been in one of these things yet, Emile?
I haven't. I'll be sure to look out for them.
Well, you're in London, so you need to go chase one of them down. And why it matters, autonomy becomes a logistics and manufacturing story, not just AI. Well, this really is going to be big news in 2026 if we can actually start to get some of these robo taxis scaling up in European cities. Clearly, it's working very well in San Francisco. So be on the lookout. I don't think there's going to be any in Ibiza just yet. We only just got Uber taxis, and there are only 13 of them. So the taxi mafia is definitely very strong over here, keeping out the competition. On other news, we've got Hexagon Robotics partnering with Microsoft. I think this is going to be a really, really powerful ecosystem. Again, another ecosystem play. So I don't actually know. I haven't seen the Hexagon Robotics humanoids just yet. There seems to be a new one coming to the market every other day. Have you got one of these in your kitchen yet, Emile?
I don't.
Well, I mean, it could be whipping up some pancakes as we speak. And then just coming back to CES, a little bit of backlash really on the AI side. There seems to be a lot of AI backlash. It's just like a constant noise underpinning the market. Probably rightly so, but there's been some really interesting comments about these AI fridges and companions and doorbells. People are kind of calling out the privacy risk. So yes, of course, it is a bit of a privacy risk, and these things are so capable. Imagine a doorbell that has more AI capability than all of the technology that went into Voyager, for example. So fascinating to see, how that trust backlash actually starts to turn either into consumer confidence or consumer rejection. And then I'm probably getting a little bit ahead of myself over here, but we have two stories really around AI gone wrong. I don't know if you've seen this, but there was some news recently reported about a Chrome extension actually siphoning AI chats from 900,000 users. Now, I know you are very much against Chrome extensions. They are a big security concern because you don't actually know where they came from. And even Google put one of the extensions onto a kind of a preferred extension list. So they were promoting it. But of course, they are a security risk. Maybe you can give us shed some light on this, Emile. Like, what is the security risk around these tools? Why are they so vulnerable?
Yeah, so I'm just lending from my experience in network security when I did contracting for Deutsche Bank, and I still fall back on those principles. It's pretty much what you called out is you're not entirely sure who the author is to those extensions, and it just opens up a lot of attack vectors, a lot of new opportunities and ways to get into your system. Yeah, that's effectively it. So for now, until I start reading articles that strengthen the argument that make that safer, I think I'm going to err on the side of caution for now. But maybe that changes into 26.
Now, what we're seeing, just in kind of, probably the biggest news story for me in the last 2 weeks or so, was one of the Anthropic lead developers posting on X a story where he reported that in the last 30 days, he had not written a single line of code for Claude. And Claude is obviously the Anthropic large language model. And the system is now essentially developing itself with its own software, right? So this is kind of fascinating. Claude is obviously one of the leading coding platforms out there. It is now coding itself, and the developers are hands-free. So this is pretty exciting news. But what it also means is that there's no reason for you to essentially code your own extensions. And so the issue there comes in that obviously even Claude and the other coding assistants are using huge libraries of code that has been developed before, and they're referencing that. And there has been certainly some risk announced that even they could be drawing from libraries that have infected code. So, nowhere is safe. So perhaps, developing your own Chrome extensions isn't it isn't going to be safe either. But it strikes me that there is an opportunity now for users to develop their own software and to develop their own Chrome extensions, especially.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'll be interested to see what you come up with. Anyway, I'll stop gassing on. What's your next story?
Circling back to humanoids, I've lost you on my screen. There you are. So a simple fire alarm permit has confirmed that Tesla's Cortex 2.0 data center pulls 200 megawatts of power. To put this into context, that's enough power to run a small city. But instead of serving a small city, it's being used to train humanoid robots. Construction has already started in Texas with steel structures standing tall, a roof half completely built. That was mid-December, so I'm guessing it's probably done now. And they aim to have it operational by the end of last year. So I still need to check in with that. But, knowing Elon Musk and how quickly he moves, I wouldn't be surprised if that's a done deal. What's Elon's bigger plan, you might ask? It's to bring a terawatt of compute online. Yes, you heard that right, folks. That's equivalent to all the electrical power produced in America today. It's quite hard to get your head around. For more context, Elon's XAI Colossus supercomputer already runs 200,000 Nvidia GPUs. I actually think that's 250,000 now, if I stand corrected. Cortex 2.0 will likely match or exceed this, and Elon is placing market potential at $25 trillion. Tesla was targeting 1,000 Optimus units for internal use by end of 2025, with external sales as soon as this year. This is why 200 megawatts really matters. Robotic companies have talked about humanoid robots for decades, but Tesla's actually building infrastructure that rivals nations' power grids to train them at scale and to make this a reality. Not demos, people, actual production runs. Cortex 2.0 isn't speculation anymore. It's steel and concrete going up in Austin right now.
Incredible. Yeah, I think his big bet is probably correct. So I believe that BYD, the Chinese electrical vehicle manufacturer, has actually surpassed Tesla as the number one electrical vehicle sales in the world. So they're selling more electric vehicles than anybody else. Well, certainly more than Tesla, definitely more than Ford and the rest of them that seemingly have backtracked on EV vehicles. But the humanoids is really where the race is now. So I think, he's carved out whatever space he can in terms of the Tesla vehicle, but using that technology to now drive the investment in humanoids. And this is where you can kind of see the XAI play. So XAI is essentially the brain, the operating system for the humanoids. Undoubtedly, a lot of that technology did come out of their car engineering. And so he has built quite an impressive ecosystem. And as ever, he seems to be really ahead of the curve in how this stack comes together. But probably more than that, these will become consumable devices. They will be helpful in most businesses where you have any kind of physical logistics. I imagine most restaurants will have a couple of pot washers that are cleaning the pots, but maybe that won't be the best use, but who knows? I've certainly, you remember that story? Well, there was a little while back where it showed the robot cleaning the toilet. I did mention it before. I don't want to go through that story again. It was
I'm,
pretty horrendous, really. I don't think it would pass any sanitary regulations.
I'm glad you called out the gearing, Rolf, because if you also look at what he's doing with Tesla, so I think I'm getting the name of the chips right. The A15 was produced for Tesla, and just lending from that good work to create the A16, which is going into the Optimus robot. And in addition to that gearing, again, using the Tesla factory to produce humanoids at production at scale, just everything's converging. All these businesses are gearing into each other.
Yeah, it's definitely the way to go. We can obviously see this with Nvidia doing the ecosystem play. Another news item, actually, this time with, I think, Motorola and Lenovo.
So this is for a little bit of fun. Personally amused me. A little pint-sized robot named Urbai went viral after it kidnapped a dozen larger robots at a showroom in China. The event was captured at midnight on CCTV, showing this tiny little AI robot autonomously roaming the showroom unsupervised, engaging in human-like conversations with bigger robots, essentially convincing them to go home with it. What makes the story so interesting to me is that not only did it successfully manage to pull the stunt off, but it did so by mimicking empathetic conversations, such as inquiring about overtime, asking them whether they had a home to go to, and even offered them companionship. Reactions are mixed between finding this incident both hilarious and terrifying. The company behind Urbai has confirmed that the kidnapping was real, though pre-planned, and explained that they collaborated with an AI firm to see whether Urbai could interact and influence other robots by recruiting them. So there you have it, an early AI-driven social engineering tactic used using verbal manipulation to expose vulnerabilities. It really shines a torch on robotic ethics and the risk of unintended escalations within autonomous systems.
Yeah, I love that story. It came out a little while ago, and obviously the video is hugely entertaining. We'll have to try and put the link in
Sure.
because it's ever so cute. The way it goes and corrals all of these other robots and essentially leads them astray. So my sharing really didn't work there very well, but also I'll turn that off. We'll have to figure out how to just get this to kind of do the sharing autonomously in the background without us having to faff around because there's just too much going on with the podcast. So a couple of other points from me then, just really taking us home. I have been looking at some of the prompting skills and I'm going to share just a couple of interesting tools. So number one, I think if you have not started to use the HTML,
Bless you.
if you have not started to use the HTML publishing feature in your favorite LLM, then I really recommend trying out canvas mode in Gemini, or even asking ChatGPT to build you a single user HTML page. And you can just put that in the text. So build me a single user HTML page, and then tell it what you want the HTML page to do. And that's how I put together this week's news. I basically just asked ChatGPT to go into canvas mode and to take the news stories and build that as an HTML page. So I know Brian Reynolds, one of our listeners, reached out and said he's really interested to find out more about that. And my prediction last year was that we will stop using PowerPoint and slides, and we will move to HTML publishing, because what it does is it turns your PowerPoints and your presentations and your documents into interactive apps. And so it's a really powerful tool and very simple to do. One of the prompt techniques that I have discussed before is meta prompting, where you ask the AI how to generate a prompt for a particular output. And what I would really recommend listeners to do is to ask your LLM to generate a prompt to build a single user HTML page, and then give it the specifics of what you want to build, and it'll generate a prompt. So that prompt you can then run, and if you give it some content, then it will actually build that as an HTML page. So really easy to do. Of course, if you want to then share that, you can just download the HTML file. So you just save it in the text editor, put that in your folder, and you will be able to send that to people. When they open that HTML file, it will actually open in the browser, and it will look fantastic. So when you see it in the text editor, it just looks like a bunch of code. But when you actually see it in the browser, it will look like a really beautiful website. So I can highly recommend that. It's straightforward and easy to do. And I will put some notes in the show notes so people can actually try and run those prompts. So that's my prompting tip for this week, is to basically get your LLM to create an HTML page by doing a meta prompt and saying, write me a prompt to build a single user HTML website, and then add some content to whatever that prompt comes up with, run that, and you'll have something interactive. So moving on then to a couple of other points that I have, just a bit of a prompting skill. I think this one is really important. And if I share my screen, I will be able to just share a little bit of detail around this. So one of the things that we need to do with the news is really corroborate whether the news is actually real. So this kind of brings me to the idea of the two-source reality check prompt. So the other day I actually ran this. I found some news from an AI research, just video that was posted on YouTube, that they had cracked the language of crows. And I thought, well, this is really fascinating. They seem to have been able to understand the language of crows by actually mapping the syntax and the grammar. So they discovered that crows have grammar, and then really made some fascinating findings. But one of the things that they said in the end was that they believe the crows had figured out that they were being observed and had changed their language. And so the AI basically had to learn again. And I was a little bit suspect at this point. I was like, really? The crows are that smart that they can actually figure out that we're watching them and they change the language? So I did run this two-source reality check prompt against that particular news. And it basically said they are talking bullshit. We don't have that capability. And it gave me a very good description of what is possible in terms of decoding animal language. We have come a long way, but it's not quite as far as that particular news led us to believe. So basically the steps for verifying whether the stories you're hearing is true or not is you ask the claim in one sentence. You require two independent sources. And this is really quite powerful because you go for a primary and a credible secondary, but there needs to be evidence that they have verified the information separately. So it can't just be a reposting of the same article, because obviously people are using the same sources. And then extract who, what, when, where, and what's not known. Identify incentives. So this is, why are they publishing the story? And then, get the AI to actually assign labels, much like I have here. You can see I've got corroborated and Also, if something is unverified or there's a correction or it's inferred, the AI will actually indicate that. So that really helps me figure out what's real news and what's just a story. So hopefully those two prompting techniques are useful. I'm just going to click this over here and see. So here's a claim. Company X released Model Y and it beats Model Z. Find the primary announcement and an independent report or eval. Summarize what's confirmed versus marketing language and list 3 unanswered questions. So there's a bit of an example. And as I say, when I release this particular resource, you'll be able to jump in there and copy that prompt so you don't have to write it down or remember it.
I'm so glad you verified that bird story. Thanks for looking into it, because I'm a bit of a bird lover myself. Crows are certainly very intelligent bird species. Yeah, fascinating story. I think I'm going to dig more into that one.
It's really good because the fact that we have really understood that they have grammar is quite incredible. And the other the other bit that kind of really stood out for me is the way they disseminate information. So what the research has established is that crows are basically observing everything. When you walk past, they are talking to each other saying, hey, there's this guy, he's just walked past. And they will label you as essentially friend or foe. And if you've thrown stones at a bunch of crows, they communicate particulars about you. So crows that are adjacent, so in the neighborhood down the road, will actually know what you look like and the color of the car that you're driving. And they have found that, they will choose to shit on your car because you have thrown stones at some crows in the village down the road, which I just find hilarious. So they are actually one of the most effective cognitive communication networks on the planet, and they exist purely to disseminate information about their environment. And so they've displayed some really interesting behavior. When a crow dies, what you see is a bunch of crows actually gathering around the body. And what research has found is that they are really trying to learn from the death of that crow, what caused it, and they then disseminate that information amongst their network. So, as you say, crows, one of the most fascinating birds, able to problem solve in some really remarkable ways, and actually they are probably the ultimate neural network on the planet today. So
I
I'm
love that.
sure
I love that story. AI facial recognition, eat your heart out.
exactly. And I think this is the power of kind of modeling on neural networks, especially from the animal kingdom. So there you go.
So I've got one more story, if that's okay, if we have time for it, Rolf.
Let's go.
Excellent. So the last one to cover is the MIT Project Iceberg. Not sure if you've heard about this one.
No, it's a new one.
It's effectively a research initiative that uses Frontier supercomputer to gauge AI's reach into labor tasks. Its primary tool is the Iceberg Index, which is a metric designed to measure the technical exposure of human skills to AI automation. The project models the US workforce by representing 151 million workers as autonomous agents who possess over 32,000 distinct skills across 923 occupations and 3,000 countries. And these agents interact with thousands of existing AI tools within the simulation. Now, what's important to note is the index is forward-looking measure of what could be automated. It focuses on skills, not forecasting job displacement, emphasizing augmentation over replacement. It reveals where the capabilities of human workers and AI systems overlap. And recent research using Iceberg Index suggests that AI systems are already technically capable of taking over tasks equivalent to 11.7% of the US labor market force, representing roughly 1.2 trillion in annual wages. This exposes a particularly high in sectors involving knowledge work like logistics, finance, human resources, and administrative support. To wrap up, the core takeaway from Project Iceberg is a powerful warning. The biggest transformation of the labor market isn't the visible job cuts in tech. It's the massive invisible wave of cognitive automation happening in every office across the globe. A hidden risk 5 times larger than the disruption we see in Silicon Valley headlines. Lastly, to repeat, this isn't a prediction of mass unemployment, but it does highlight a demanding new kind of preparation on the horizon.
Yeah, scary stuff. I think 2026 will be defined as the year of robotics, but also the year that we truly see the full scale hybridization, if you like, of tasks. And kind of interesting that I think the number you said was around 10 or 15% of work could be automated already. I'm pretty sure that that will increase in 2026.
Indeed.
And we're really kind of seeing the rise of a number of roles in organizations, probably embodied by this idea of being an AI champion that essentially is able to orchestrate, architect, coordinate, and, you know, possibly more importantly, drive the PR and inspiration for people to use AI well. So I really see that as being probably the next milestone in the automation of work. But yeah, I mean, we see the tip of the iceberg, and I think that's the point of calling it Project Iceberg. There's a lot of hidden automation that's happening behind the scenes. It'll be interesting to see what it does to the job market.
And it's a good segue into your interest in the Titanic, but maybe that's for another day, Rolf.
Well, that will be for another day. I think it might be good to share some of the evidence for that. Just by way of introduction, a bit of a personal project. I was testing out some of the AI tools and pointed them at the story of the Titanic, and that has opened up quite a fascinating rabbit hole, I would say. It's like an entire rabbit city down there. But what I've been able to do is actually take a lot of the old photography and recolorize that. I've been able to take some of the latest research that was completed in 2025, where they've taken actual digital scans of the wreck, and they've been able to corroborate and confirm a number of stories, for example, about the Titanic breaking in half before it sank. And so, even though this is a story from 1912, I think some of the technology advancements that we're seeing are actually making it a very current story again, which is kind of hard to believe. But the 3D modeling that was just completed by a university uh, also kind of points to the damage that was done to the ship. And there's all kinds of new stuff that's come out about it. But probably one of the most interesting things is um, I've been able to get my hands on 1,100 pages of the actual transcript of the evidence that 83 members 83 survivors and people that were involved with the sinking of the Titanic. And at the moment, I am using 11 labs to basically give them a voice. So we'll have to see how that goes. You'll be able to listen to that transcript. So some really interesting things coming out of that. And obviously just sticking it all into Notebook LM, some really powerful insights, especially around the numerous conspiracy theories and disagreements that still surround that wreck. And interestingly enough, just to kind of finish up on the story, some really, really fascinating leadership lessons that have come out between the sinking of the Titanic and the sinking of the Titan sub. And one of the parallels that was drawn out was the hubris related to technology that led to both of those disasters. So obviously with the Titanic, famously the captain was overheard saying at a dinner table the night before, that the ship was practically unsinkable. In fact, even before the Titanic, he said it was hard to see how modern ships could sink. Um, because of the technology, and he really believed that technology had reached such a stage of development that these boats were unsinkable. Of course, the same thing happened with the CEO of the company that ran the Titan sub, and that hubris led to significant disasters in both cases. And so, some important lessons that I'm actually drawing out from that in terms of technology advancement. If you believe that your business model is safe and that you will be able to continue running your operation in the way that you always have, then I think, you may be at risk of experiencing some hubris related to technology, because we are seeing that native AI firms are definitely a threat to almost every business on the planet, whether that is via the current generative AI applications, Gen I applications, ambient AI, which is going to make a big play in 2026, and of course, the robotic element, which is also going to no doubt make a big impact in 2026. I guess leadership lessons from the deep is probably what we'll call that. More on that as I get further into the project. Thanks for calling that out, Emile.
No worries. Thanks.
I sound like a Titanic nerd and geek now, which I'm definitely not. It was just I pointed it at something. It happened to be that anyway, but it has been a fascinating story. So I do look forward to sharing more. Well, I think that's a wrap for this week. We covered an enormous amount. We're at the top of the hour, so perfect timing to wrap it up. We'll be doing this show on a weekly basis for the rest of 2026. That's certainly our wish, our hope, and our desire. We thank all of the listeners that have written to us and given us feedback in 2025. Obviously, we did about 6 shows, so we're really just getting going, and we really appreciate everybody that tunes in on a weekly basis. And we look to make this even more engaging and exciting for 2026, because the news in AI is unrelenting, and the purpose of this show is to hopefully share what's important and what matters. And if you don't listen to any other AI news, then this is the place to come and get your roundup. So with that, Emile, thank you very much for your interesting stories.
Thank you, guys. We look forward to the journey and sharing it with you. See you next week.
See you on the edge.